welcome to What's the Big Book Actually Saying for Step 1. First things first, Steps 1 and 2 are completely covered in the Big Book prior to page 59, where they are formally brought up. You know, the description that we're very much used to seeing on the walls. That's on page 59. And so to me, it's logical that if we read the Big Book the way it was written, and we were one of the founding readers of the Big Book, in other words, someone in Cleveland or Melbourne or the UK or wherever, who had no fellowship around them, we would have to just read and then transform our lives and maybe carry the message to the second person nearby. And as such, when we encounter this description of Step 1, it is assumed by the authors of the Big Book that we've done a whole lot of reading around what this description means, because on its own, it's not all that illuminating. Okay, I'm powerless over alcohol. How? What does that mean? What are the aspects of powerlessness? And equally, my life is unmanageable. What does that mean? To what extent? There's lots of unanswered questions here, but that's what a summary is for. If we have read 20, 30, 40 pages about what this means, then it can afford to not be totally clear. It's a summary after the fact. And so this is one of the last descriptions of Step 1, not one of the first. So what I'm looking at today is what are the other clear descriptions of Step 1 that the Big Book is talking about prior to this rather overhead, lacking in detail summary. So let's have a look, first of all, at the unmanageable aspect. So let's start with the second. Why? I don't know about you. I didn't go to AA, my first meeting, because I was powerless over alcohol. I went because my life was in the toilet. So many of us start with the unmanageability rather than going, alcohol is my only problem. I actually went to AA thinking I had a whole bunch of problems and maybe stopping drinking would help. I didn't realise that the problem was alcoholism itself and the life that it was giving me. Now, if we look at the unmanageability, the Big Book doesn't have a section entitled this chapter or this paragraph unpacks the unmanageability that Step 1 is talking about later on. No, we have to go hunting for descriptions of unmanageability. And here's one from the doctor's opinion. Once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, this is obviously a chronic alcoholic. Once having lost self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Could there be a clearer description of the, if you like, the chronology of where a hopeless alcoholic's drinking takes them? Let's unpack it. We've formed the habit. In other words, we are drinking, non-stop or out of control, and we can't stop at all. We cannot break it. What's the next step? We lose self-confidence. That happened to me. Why would I have a lot of self-confidence if I was drinking myself into an unmanageable situation? Their reliance upon things human, that's the next step. I really became so self-reliant at the end of my drinking. I'm sure many of us do. Because humans weren't certainly relying on me anymore. Two-way street. No one's relying on anyone. At that point, problems pile up on us. Why wouldn't they? And become astonishingly difficult to solve. Well, of course they do. We're drunk and hungover all the time. So there's a real pragmatism and truth in this stepped out description of how alcoholism, not being able to stop drinking, creates the outcome of a life that's harder to manage, not easier to manage. Here's another one. This is from Bill's story. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I was overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. And this, of course, is more of an emotional inside journey of what happens to us. With this last one, though, I find if I'm working with a sponsee, for example, they don't always identify with words like morass. So if I was to update this working, and this is what we do, isn't it? If we're sponsoring, we unpack these complex, old-fashioned sentences and maybe update the words. So if I have to unpack the last paragraph for someone today, I might as well show you what I do. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that dark emotional place. Bit of morass. self-pity, dark emotional place. I don't know. I was smashed. I use different words these days. I was toast. I was cactus. I'd met my match. I'd been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. However we unpack this or describe it, the point here is, and you can see it in the highlighted bits, alcohol is in control of me and as a result, giving me an unmanageable life. Not vice versa. I don't know about you, but I used to think coming into AA, my life is terrible and I drink over it. And that may be true, but that's not what we're being asked to admit at step one. We're asked to admit the opposite. We're asked to admit that alcohol is our problem and it's creating the reasons that cause us to drink more, that our life is becoming more unmanageable because we're drunk and hungover all the time and we can't stop and we feel terrible about ourselves. So alcohol is the instigator of the unmanageability. Alcohol's the master. I'm in a dark emotional place. Once having formed the habit, can't break it, look where it's taking me. So this is what the big book is actually saying. Let's have a look at some more. Now, this is a different take again on unmanageability. This is from There Is a Solution. And for me, it's about, okay, as we're going down, we're taking people with us. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him. And again, I would usually, probably as I read it to someone, change the him to a them. It's more inclusive. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for them and no one is angry or hurt, but not so the alcoholic illness, for with it there goes annihilation of all the things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and partners and spouses and whomever else. Best friends, people from down the street who we just bump into and talk and annoy. Who cares? A whole bunch of sad people, anyone can increase the list. The point here, no matter how it's expressed, is really simple. As we go down, we take a lot of other people with us. The relationships get soured. Everything gets messier and messier. This is a beautiful, if you like, interpersonal description of unmanageability. Alcohol is in control of me and giving me an unmanageable life, not vice versa. If we look at the top of this paragraph, the disease is described. It's likened to cancer. And the difference is if I've got cancer, you'll send me flowers. If I've got alcoholism, you'll send me annoying letters and emails. Do you know, it's the illness that's driving us towards having more and more and more unmanageability. And this is what the big book is actually saying. And we need to think about our drinking story in relation to this to work out whether we can admit step one. And I think that's really important. Now let's look at what this powerlessness over alcohol is expressed as in the big book. The next bit. Let's go up to the top. I love this short part of Bill's story. I met a kind doctor, we know it was Silkworth, who explained that though I was certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. I love this. I mean, here's the doctor going, yeah, I understand you feel selfish. I understand you feel foolish and that, but hey, you're actually ill, bodily and mentally. And this is the most important bit. Again and again and again in the sections of the big book that describe alcoholism, our powerlessness over it, and therefore what we are required to admit to truly take step one, alcoholism is only described as having two components, the physical and the mental. So we need to understand each and not bring other components into it. I'll be honest, I've heard some people say it's a threefold illness, but that's not what these critical sections of the big book say. They simply don't say there's a spiritual dimension to alcoholism. They go on and on about the physical and the mental. And so as far as I'm concerned, that's what I'm being asked to admit to at step one. Trust me, we get to admit to the spiritual malady later on at step three. We don't miss out. But that's many pages hence. So bodily and mentally. Here's another description. But in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. I love this. This is from There Is a Solution. All of the excuses, all the reasons why we think we drink. No. In my heart, at the end of my drinking. I didn't know why I was doing it. It was crazy to do it, but I did it. So once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. So rather than knowing why I'm an alcoholic, rather than knowing why I drink, it's the opposite. Okay? We're baffled. This is really confusing. And I can really identify with that. I swore off alcohol every day for the last 2 years of my drinking, then swore back on a couple of hours later. And I had no clue as to why. There is the obsession that somehow, someday they will beat the game, but they often suspect they are down for the count. Again, sometimes some of the sponsees I work with, they don't always respond to these 1930s analogies. So sometimes as they go, what is that actually saying? I'll go, well, okay, what it says is, but in their hearts, they really do not know why they keep drinking. Once this medical condition, malady, has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will drink with control, like their friends do. But they often suspect they're lying to themselves. So what we see here is the two sides of the disease. Sorry, I just jumped forward. Then let me go back. We're seeing that once the drinking has a real hold, our thinking changes. So what we're looking at here in particular is the mental side of things. That I think I can drink like normal people, but I can't. I don't even know why I keep drinking. I just reach to the point where I do, and I'm confused and I'm baffled. So we are equally positive, same page, that once he takes any alcohol, hang on, just a little tweaking. We are equally positive that once we take any alcohol, whatever, into our system, something happens both in the bodily and mental sense. There they are again, the two sides, which makes it virtually impossible for us to stop. So that's what we need to accept. That's the physical allergy. We don't even know why, we're baffled, but we have to accept, which is the same as admitting that that when we drink any alcohol whatsoever, something happens. Now, let's look at the next paragraph, which is more about the mental. Not only had I been off guard, this is a story from page 41. I made no fight whatever against the first drink. Off guard, okay? That's the mental side of things. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. So it's like amnesia. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. That doesn't need any updating at all because we still have ginger ale today. So what we have here is a description of the physical malady or the allergy. Okay, is if we have any alcohol physically in our system, it makes it virtually impossible for us to stop. And here's the mental obsession. A momentary belief we can drink normally. Now, this is all the big book is actually saying about powerlessness over alcohol. All right, let's have a look at some more. Oh, I'm going backwards, not forwards. Hang on. Beautiful. If when you honestly want to, you find that you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. This is the first paragraph of We Agnostics as we are tying off step one in a nice bow and moving on to step two. This is the particular paragraph I show to any newcomer who needs to leave in 60 seconds from now. And I say, okay, you need to get someone, that's fine. Thanks for coming to your first meeting. But do you want to know what alcoholism is or what the big book? Yeah, please. Great. Have a read of this. It is one of the clearest descriptions of what powerlessness over alcohol is talking about at page 59. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. Are we seeing a pattern here, my friends? Physical allergy, malady. Malady, allergy, the disease. Beautiful description of the disease, simple and clear. The mental obsession. Just down the bottom, the lurking notion that someday we'll be immune to alcohol, immune to it. We can drink normally. This momentary belief we can drink normally. This is what we must admit to. And the second half of the unmanageable life is just a consequence of this. This is what alcoholism is in regards to what the big book is actually saying. The fact that most alcoholics, this is another set of paragraphs from page 24, there is a solution. They happen one after the other. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. Okay. Physical allergy, we are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. Physical, mental, over and over again, we have clarification of the two aspects of what we're asked to admit in the first half of this page 59 description of step 1. And all of the stuff I've just shown you happens before page 59, okay? So if we read this and understand it, then when we get to page 59 and we're asked to admit to being powerless over alcohol, we'll actually have a clue as to what it's talking about and how simple and local and specific what we're admitting to must be. Now, let's look at it another way, the mental and the physical aspects of alcoholism, the doctor's opinion, as a cycle. Now, what I'm about to show you is the cycle expressed in chunks of a single paragraph, I think it is, in the doctor's opinion. They follow each other. I'm not leaving anything out. I believe it's only 2 sentences. The whole cycle of addiction. Here we go. They are restless, irritable, and discontented. We're talking about alcoholics, of course. Unless they can again experience the ease and comfort which comes by taking a few drinks, which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated again and again. So this is the cycle of addiction. And even in this, I'm going to change it actually, just going to update it. We get annoyed by things uncomfortable in our own skin, restless, etc. So we start thinking about escaping those feelings with a drink or two. Hey, others do it, right? Then we start drinking, and probably not with the goal of getting smashed, but we get smashed anyway. We do anyway. Why? Once we start, we really can't stop. We crave more. And then we swear off for good until we get annoyed by things, uncomfortable in our own skin and restless, blah, 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 and around we go. The point I was about to make before I got to this updated version, which I do update for my sponsees verbally, to make it clearer, is here's the mental obsession in blue. If you take those in, that's the mental obsession. The mental obsession that I can, drink normally. Here's the physical allergy, the malady, the stuff that makes me different from most other drinkers. And then repeat it again and again. We swear off for good until something bad happens, and there is the unmanageability. So the doctor's opinion, the cycle of addiction, literally unpacks and makes more specific, admitting that we were powerless over alcohol 2 ways, mentally and physical. Life becomes unmanageable. And that's it. That is all the big book is actually saying about step 1 in a nutshell. Have a happy sober day. Cheers.